So, what do we mean by this idea of connection and leadership? What do we mean by that? What's the point of having, what's this connection thing? What do we mean by that? And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a couple of things that I think are really important to be aware of. And the conscious part of conscious leadership is probably about many things, but the connection part of conscious leadership is connecting with self. Conscious leaders are self aware, they're connected with themselves, they know where they're at. And I'm just going to stop the share for a moment to give you the full screen on the slides. And so, yeah, the connection with self element is a massive part of this, and it starts with that. Because how can we connect with others if we're disconnected from ourselves? How can we connect with what others are feeling and the depth of what's going on in their lives if we are disconnected from self? And so that's the first part. But also, we then need to connect with others. It's not about just, well, let me just sit here and in my lotus position and go, It's a lot more to it than in leadership, isn't there? Where we want to actually have the dynamic and we want to be able to connect with our people and have them really feel like they're acknowledged as human beings. And I think this is a significant thing in leadership, is that people want to be seen, people want to be recognized. There's a reason why in most of the African greetings, the greeting means I see you. And when I see you, it's not just I see that you're here. I see you, I see your people, I see where you're coming from, I see you in depth. And so connection is vital, but how do you do that if you haven't connected with self first? So those are the first two bits of connection. But then it goes a little bit further. We also, as leaders, connect people with each other. So if we have a team, for example, we want our team members to communicate with each other. And there's a lovely analogy that I use a lot when I'm doing teams training with leaders all over the world, and that is this idea. Imagine a football team, a soccer team, and every time they pass the ball, they have to pass to the captain. And then that captain passes to somebody, and then they pass back to the captain. Then the captain passes to somebody and pass back to the captain. I mean, that team's not going to win anything, right? Because the way we want is we want our people connected with each other, and that's going to be the way they can then pass to each other. You as the leader are no longer the bottleneck. And I think that's an important part of conscious leadership. So we've got connection with self, connection with others, connecting them with each other. But it doesn't actually stop there. Because now we could go even broader. We could go say, well, our job as leaders is also to connect people with resources. We can't have people hindered in being able to do their job if they don't have the resources they need to do their job. Then we can even look more broadly. And for some people, it would be connecting with our environment, connecting with the global issues. That's another thing that can be really important for some leaders, maybe less so with others. And for some people, even the importance of spiritual connection would also be part of consciousness, some sort of level of spiritual connection as well. And so this connection word is critical to the concept of leadership. And different people, I'm going to start with this connection with self because that's what we headline this advertising as a connection with self, because that's the beginning point and everything flows from that. And so I'm going to just talk about some different ways that people connect. People connect with themselves, for example, through meditation, contemplative prayer, or other kind of mindfulness exercises. A second way is check-ins, doing a little check-in. What's happening? How am I feeling physically today? What's happening emotionally? What's going on in my head? What am I sensing physically? All of these things. So check-ins, journaling, other kinds of self-reflection is a second way that we can connect with ourselves. A third way, some people do exercises like yoga or breath work, those kind of similar exercises. And I've got some friends who are particularly strong on the breath work, for example. And many people, different ways of connecting with self. For some people, their connection with self starts with something very physical. So I know of people, for example, who are trail runners, and their meditation is running in the mountains. That is their meditation. That is their connection with self. When the world doesn't make sense to them, they go for a run in the mountains, and then the world makes sense again. There's something about connecting with self through that. And for some of you, it might be cycling or dancing, some form of running or walking or something like that. a fourth way that we can connect with ourselves is getting into nature. And typically, for most people, it's one or more of these four possibilities. Or a combination of them. Water, connecting. There's a connection with self in water, and I put that one first because it's mine. I love water. I love being in water. I love being next to water. I love looking at water, and whether it's the waves or a mountain stream or a waterfall or a swimming pool or whatever. My only thing is, if I'm going to be in it, I don't want it to be too cold. That's my only little exception. I do like it to be a little bit warm. But yeah, so water is one. Another one is plants. Some people love being in the bush or love being in a forest. That's their connection with self. Another one is mountains. Many people I know, there's a connection with self by being in a mountain or on a mountain. Or for some, it's a combination. So it's a mountain next to the sea or whatever it might be. And then, of course, there's one that's a little bit more neglected, but that is the connection with self through deserts. And some people find that their deepest connection with self is by being in the desert. And having been, for example, on an outing when I've been in the UAE, out of Dubai, and going right the way into the desert, and suddenly there's just nobody. You're on your own. And some people connect with themselves that way. And then finally, so that's the nature one. That was number 5. And number 6, and of course there's many more, but number 6 I've got is music. So listening to music, playing a musical instrument, singing, various things like that sometimes are ways people connect with themselves. So let's do a quick poll. Let's have a look at this and do a quick poll. So let me just, okay. So our first poll today is as follows, and I'm going to just go there and show you that, and then we will. Okay, so now this is our poll. And our poll is, and you can follow this on your phone. By the way, if you didn't manage to connect with your phone using that QR code, feel free to go to ahaslides.com/MIU. And for some reason, that MIU needs to be in capital letters. So ahaslides.com/MIU. And you can now be choosing which of these work for you. And you can choose up to 3. So you can't choose all of them, but you can choose up to 3. And there's 6 options plus other, and I don't connect with myself. So the other, you could then put into the chat what that other is, what your way of connecting with yourself is, if you choose other, or one of your ways. It could be other ways as well. And then if you don't ever connect with yourself, then you can put that one in as well. And let's see, we're seeing a nice little spread coming up here. And by the way, if you do choose other, please add it to the chat. We would love to see what the other ones are that I don't have on my list. So, okay, so we've got, the water, just not Nordic temperatures. I'm with you, Alison. Okay, so if you do choose the other, please tell us what it is. Give us an indication in the chat what I've missed. Okay, so we're seeing the meditation and yoga type thing is the biggest one so far. Getting into nature is the next biggest. All right, let's see. Any more responses? Let's get a couple more in. ahaslides.com/MIU. These are anonymous, by the way, in case you're wondering. I have no way of seeing who put what in. So if you'd like to participate, please do so and jump in so that we can get some more responses in here. What am I seeing? The active, like the running or cycling, it looks like maybe only one person there. And the listening to music, there is an additional one there. Okay. Do I need to give anybody more time? It's 7 people. Okay, there's more coming through. The listening to music has gone up. The check-ins and journaling has gone up. What I haven't done is I haven't actually added my own in here to this chat, but we've got quite a nice little spread. So the meditation, yoga, and getting into nature seem to be the most prominent here, followed by check-ins and music. Excellent. Okay, so keep your phone handy for more for another poll that'll be coming up a little bit later. Plus, you can log questions if you want to, so feel free to do that. So let's have a look here. What have we got coming through? Stars in space and maths. Oh, Bruce, absolutely. I can see that for you. Stars in space and maths and numbers. And I've, by the way, Bruce and I are quite good friends, so I'm very aware of his maths and numbers thing, and I've seen him go into almost like a trance-like, beautiful state with that. Fire, I love the fire one. I need to add that to my nature one. Thank you, Marie. And then silence, says Anissa. Absolutely. Thank you, Anissa, and welcome to you. Good to have you along again today. All right, so let me stop the share, and there's more coming through. Okay, the nature one is now the biggest one. Nice. There we go. Okay, followed by the meditation, the yoga, and the music, and then the check-ins and journaling and so on. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your participation. Excellent. Okay, so next thing is the whole issue of why. Why is this important? Why do we want to connect as leaders? Why does connection help us to be better leaders? Why is this whole thing important? And I'm going to take you through a few things here. And I'm going to start with this one. There is no conscious leadership without connecting with self. And that's quite a strong statement, but I truly believe it's absolutely true, because conscious leadership is all about leaders who have been on a journey with themselves. So how do you go on that without connecting with yourself? So the first point is there is no conscious leadership without it. Secondly, how could we hope to connect with others if we haven't connected to self? I said that already. And then I want to just explore very quickly 5 more reasons why connection with self is so important. Connection with self is vital for emotional intelligence. Basically, in emotional intelligence, the very first point is self-awareness. So how do you do that if you haven't got that? Second is relational intelligence. If we are not connecting with self, how do we have the social awareness to connect with others and understand where they're coming from? So the second part of that, relational intelligence. Then systems intelligence. Now, systems intelligence is where we are aware of the different relational systems. So for that to work properly, we need to be connected with self as well. Then another very, very important skill of a leader is listening. And a lot of people don't underestimate how powerful listening is as a source of power in leadership. The better we listen, the better we can lead. And so how can we, if we can't hear ourselves, how can we hear others? Is really the point I'm making. And I think that's a fascinating point, is we want to be able to really listen to others, but if we've got something brewing in ourselves that we haven't dealt with, that we haven't heard, it's going to be a blockage for us to hear others. And then finally, a needs awareness. I think this is one other reason. If we can't name our needs, how can we see other people's needs? And this skill of naming needs is one that I've been exploring a lot lately. And I'm going to give you a very brief little story. I once coached a team of 2 people who were going to go on a cycling tour through the Caucasus. And they asked if I wouldn't just come and have dinner with them so that they can set up how they would team better while they were doing their cycling through the Caucasus. In the country of Georgia in Eastern Europe. And we debated back and forth, and eventually they decided there was only one rule. And that one rule was name your needs. And if they could each name their needs, their teaming would work. And by the way, it doesn't mean the other person has to fix your needs for you. It's just that they are named and there's an awareness. And this naming of needs is a massive teaming principle. And when I see people who are good at naming their needs without putting in manipulative pressure on that, you then automatically see a better connection and a better teaming. And how can we name our needs if we don't connect with ourselves to see what our needs are? And then how could we see other people's needs? So that's our why for this topic of connection. Now let's talk about the who. Who needs this? Who needs this connection with ourselves and all this kind of thing? Well, firstly, everyone. And this is not just for leaders. Everyone needs it. Self-connection is vital to growth and mental health. If we cannot accept and connect with ourselves, we cannot grow and we cannot have a healthy mental health. So that is a very big one. Secondly, who else needs connection? Well, leaders and parents. Anyone who wants to become a more conscious leader, you need it. But I want to take it a step further. Legacy makers need this. If you want to leave a legacy in life, if you want to leave a lasting change, if you want to make a difference in the world or in your world, you need to connect with self first, and everything else will flow from that. So that's who needs it. Now, one more element is the whole element of when. When do we need connection with self? And I'm going to answer this from a couple of different perspectives, but I think it could be quite fun. So when do we need this connection with self? So the first thing is we need it now. The inner journey will never be urgent until it's a crisis or too late. And this is the thing that often we miss, is there's always something that's more important. There's always something that's calling us, something that's drawing us, something that it gets in the way. There's a crisis, there's a busyness or whatever. And you know this whole thing about, do we play off the urgent or do we play off the important? And you know what we often miss out on is forgetting that the things that are important that we neglect will become urgent when it's too late. And I can give you example after example. But you know, let's use the very tangible one that we often talk about is firefighting versus fire prevention. Now, obviously, we've got to fight fires. We can't ignore them. But if we never do fire prevention, all we're going to do is more and more firefighting. Okay, so let's take it a step further. Many of you are parents. When do we take the time to instill good values in our children, to listen to them, to make them feel heard, to make them feel understood? Well, if we wait until it's a crisis, drugs, pregnancy, you know, whatever it is, we're basically too late. So there are so many things in life that will never be urgent, because whether you connect with your child today or tomorrow usually isn't going to make that much difference. Whether you connect with your team members today or tomorrow typically isn't going to make that much difference until it's too late, until you have a crisis, until you have a real problem. And so there is an urgency of connecting with self and then connecting with our people. Secondly, regularly. Preferably a daily practice, even multiple times per day. I've realized sometimes I'm finding that I get to a point in the evening. I have a morning meditative practice, and when sometimes I get to the evening and I realize something is gnawing at me that I haven't processed yet. Something has agitated me, and then I will sit and do an additional journaling session. Journaling is a big one for me, and then suddenly I feel the burden lifted and I'll sleep better and that kind of thing. So I've also had scenarios where through a work crisis, I've had to go outside and breathe for a while. Just take some really deep breaths, you know, and of course I'm probably breathing all the time, otherwise I wouldn't be alive. But there's something about doing an extra bit of some deep breaths. And basically the science behind that is that when we're breathing shallow, it brings out all the negative hormones because it's survival, fight or flight. When we breathe deeply, it sends a different signal to the body, which is all the positive hormones that then get released. And so just doing a simple breathing exercise, for example, is a great way to connect with self. So that's so I've said when, now, regularly, and I'm going to add one more, which is in crisis. Getting out of the primal brain, escaping regretted actions. Before we send that flame email, connect with yourself, be aware of what's happening, and then you'll be able to venture forth with a much better sort of answer. Okay. All right. Now we're going to do one more poll. So let me quickly share the screen, and then I'm going to go through some things you can do, which are kind of implied already, but I think it's going to be quite useful. So the poll I'd like to do now is this one here. Okay. Why are you not showing me? There we go. Okay, so here we go. Next poll is this one. What has surprised or stimulated you so far in what we've been talking about today? What has surprised or stimulated you in what we've been talking about so far today? And so we're going to build a bit of a word cloud. If you see a phrase up here that you would like emphasized, just type it in again, and then that word will become bigger and bigger. So we've got a few different concepts coming through, meditation, breath work. So if any one of these is really big for you, just type it in and it will make that word even bigger for everybody. So the one repeated so far is me. That's why it's in the middle and bigger. So we have breath work, self is good, connect with self, nature is important, meditation, nature, breathe, self, nice. Very good word cloud building. Going to give it another minute or so. Any of these that you see that you really like, just type it in again and it will get bigger. So we can see which are the most important common things that we've got between us. So that is quite clear. Okay, the me one is coming up a lot. Breathe is coming up as a bigger one now as well. Okay. So any you like on the screen? Breathwork is now coming up as big. Me, breathe, breathwork, nature, all of those are larger than the rest. Okay. And by the way, one of the reasons we do this is when we send this out to those who couldn't be here, they get to see what stood out for other people through the session. We use this as a graphic in that as well. All right. Me, breathe, nature, connect with self, big one. Okay. Wow. What a lovely picture. Okay. Excellent, everybody. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go to wrap up the session with the how. So we've spoken about what it is, we've spoken about why, we've spoken about for who, we've spoken about when, and we are now going to switch over to talk about how. How do we improve connection? And thank you for those who are still typing in. I'm seeing more and more contribution to the word cloud. Thank you very much. Okay, so the how. Let's talk a little bit about this. The first thing is, so the question is, how can we increase our connection with self? That's what I'm really asking or answering. So the first one is discover and tune into what works for you. So we've talked about the mindfulness activities, the physical activities, mental activities. Thank you, Bruce, for reminding me about your thing with maths and other things that we can do, various types of nature immersion. So we talked about all of these already. But really the point is to discover and tune into what works for you. Don't try and do them all. You know, if we took all of the ones that were either in the chat or that I suggested, I think there's at least 8 different areas and each one has various sub areas. Don't try and do them all. Tune into what works for you because it will be different for each person, for each of you. And I think that is the first point. So the second is get a mindfulness app. Some people don't know where to start with mindfulness or meditation, and there's some great ones out there. Insight Timer is the one I use pretty much every day. I think I've got logged over nearly 1,300 days that I have used the app. So I've been using it for a long time now. And in fact, last year, I didn't miss a single day. I used it every single day during 2021. So Insight Timer is one I use. Another really good one is Calm. And one of the things I love about Calm is you can get bedtime stories read by incredible voices like Idris Elba and so on. Just brilliant bedtime stories and other things just to calm you down. Another one is Headspace. Now I've used Headspace also, I think, for over 700 or 800 days that I used Headspace before I switched to Insight Timer. Headspace is brilliant as well. And then there's one called Synctuition. Robert, I think you've played with that one quite a lot. It, in the end, for some reason, wasn't working for me, so I stopped it, but I know it works for many people, and many people rave about how it's changed their lives. And then there's another one called Super Better, which is really about becoming stronger in yourself. And you can team with other people about various things. And it can be health, it can be diet, it can be all sorts of things, but it's a self-connection app that you can then use socially with your friends if you wanted to as well. So there's a whole bunch of these. We'll put these into the handout so you'll be able to see that. My third point, and I see I'm running out of time, is learn more about yourself. Discover your wiring. Discover, use something like a Strengths Finder or a Standout or something like that. And guess what? We're about to launch our own little assessment. And that is coming up soon. It's going to be called the Egg. So watch this space. You will be hearing from us very, very soon. and we're going to be asking you, what's your egg score? Where are you with your egg? So that's coming up soon. So we will have that ready in the next couple of weeks, and we're very excited about that. Love it or loathe it lists. Be aware of what are the tasks you love, what are the tasks you loathe. Connect with yourself on that level. Emotional intelligence. Go through something like Emotional Intelligence 2.0 or the Emotional Capital Report's another one I'm certified in. That's another one. Now, my final tip for you, and I know I'm over time, is if you really want to connect with yourself, have a crisis, a personal crisis. And the reason is that I had one in 2011 and it changed my life. And it was me learning to connect with myself, getting up every day and saying, I am my number one job. And so much changed in my life because of that. So it's not something I would necessarily suggest you go and look for, but having a personal crisis is a great way to discover and connect with yourself. And of course, from that, getting a therapist was one thing. One of the things I ended up doing, going on a Vipassana retreat where I learned Vipassana meditation, a 10-day silent retreat, and so on. But that all flowed from that 2011 crisis that changed my life. Okay, so I'm a little bit over time. We're going to go into the Q&A, but just to remind you before we do that, next month in June is Are Your Questions More Important Than Your Answers? We're going to be talking about conscious leaders and the way that conscious leaders are so in tune with the questions that their people are asking. And so are your questions more important than your answers? I've already hinted at what I think the point is, and we're going to talk about conscious leadership being a place where we can ask good questions and give good answers. All right, so that's it.